What follows is a summary of changes to the Parts 2, 3 and Standard Check assessments. Amendments have been made to operating procedures due to COVID-19. Why are these changes needed? The industry already recognises that working in vehicles in close proximity to pupils and candidates carries a higher risk than many other professions. Because of this, standard operating procedures have been adapted across driver and rider testing and training to limit the risk of infection from COVID-19. As ADI and PDI assessments require 3 people to be in vehicle, extra precautions must be taken to limit exposure to infection. Why is it important to continue with these assessments at this time? We mustn't lose sight of the fact that road risk is a public health issue too. Ensuring those who deliver driver and rider training are up to standard is an important factor in managing road risk. Therefore, it is crucial we continue ADI assessments to ensure the quality standard of training and learning is maintained. These assessments are also a regulatory requirement. So overall, to mitigate risk and comply with regulation, it's important we don't neglect instructor assessment and enforcement at this time. A natural suggestion in the context of de-risking the process further and limiting exposure will be to dispense with a live pupil, i.e. the third person in the vehicle, and temporarily reintroduce role play. NASP did suggest this to DVSA, and DVSA did consider this idea, but on balance believed that the need to ensure candidates were observed in as real-life training sessions as possible was more important in terms of ensuring the trainer had the required skills and competency to carry out their role to the required standard. Another reason is that roleplay doesn't fit with the national standards for driver and rider training, the important focus on a client-centred perspective, the need to design and adapt training programmes to meet the needs of the individual pupils, and the ability to assess the trainer managing risk in a real environment. Introducing roleplay would also confuse PDIs as their training has not been centred on this method. Additionally, the current marketing sheet has no provision for roleplay. Neither are examiners currently trained to deliver these assessments utilising roleplay. What hasn't changed? There's no change to what the examiner expects to see and assess. Candidates should cover all competencies, even though time has been reduced. You'll still be assessed on all elements. Candidates should also have spent time when they collect their pupils, setting out the goals of the lesson and discussing risk management. This should be done before the test, and a brief recap of the lesson goals should be done in a couple of minutes in the car. It's still expected that all key competencies are recapped for the purposes of the assessment. So what are the main changes? For obvious reasons, the meet and greet and debrief will be conducted outside, not in waiting rooms, wherever possible. The assessment will be 45 minutes overall, with a focus of keeping as much of the assessment wheels moving as possible. There will also be the introduction of phone calls to confirm arrangements for the assessment. These will be made by the ADI enforcement team a week or so before your assessment. Examiner, candidates and pupils will be required to wear a face covering and follow good hand, respiratory and vehicle hygiene practices to mitigate the risk of infection to all concerned. Let's look at the wheels moving part. This does not mean that candidates cannot stop during the lesson or pull over briefly to change the lesson plan if something goes wrong or a risk is occurring. DVSA expect and encourage this to ensure key points are picked up and discussed, but also to ensure that risks are managed. The examiner is not expecting a 10 to 15 minute long static brief during the 40 minutes wheels moving assessment. A few minutes maximum will suffice. If a candidate persists with a static brief and the examiner cannot make a satisfactory assessment, the examiner will try and manage the situation with a discreet prompt. All of this is designed to keep the vehicle in motion and well ventilated so the risk of infection is reduced. Let's look at that customer contact call. When the ADI enforcement team call you, you will confirm your pupil is either partly trained, or a full licence holder and not a beginner. A location for your assessment will be discussed, with the default being the driving test centre. In this call, the examiner will remind the instructor to ensure the car is clean and well sanitised and that they are aware of the COVID secure arrangements and standard operating procedures during COVID-19. Please note, as the focus of these changes is designed to reduce the period of exposure and time spent in an enclosed vehicle, Every effort must be made to keep the main body of the assessment, wheels, moving and the vehicle well ventilated. Therefore, a beginner or static or basic manoeuvres lesson is not acceptable. The examiner will not conduct the test if you present with a beginner, and your fee will be lost. Instructors must bring a pupil also that can wear a face covering. Exemptions will not apply on these assessments. Let's have a quick recap. What hasn't changed? There's no change to what the examiner expects to see and assess. Candidates should cover all competencies, even though time has been reduced. The candidate should also have spent time when they collect their pupils setting out the goals of the lesson and discussing risk management. This should be done before the test, and a brief recap of lesson goals should be done in a couple of minutes in the car. It's still expected that the key competencies are recapped for the purposes of the assessment. Let's have a look at how you can best prepare for your next assessment. NASP advises you seek development from an audit trainer. You can also request your fault analysis report and review your performance via that. And looking at the individual fault analysis of your pupils can help you develop your performance. More on that in a moment. Remember, the examiner will call you in advance to explain the COVID precautions. You can also research in the meantime the standard operating procedures on the NASP website. There's also lots of other advice on that website to help you prepare. And remember, make sure that car is sanitised, front and rear, and the same obviously for bikes as well. When you meet the examiner, you must wait by the car, have your licence or ADI certificate ready to view, have training records and trainer details available, explain the pupil's training so far, outline a likely plan for the lesson. Remember, all of this discussion will take place outside the car where possible. Looking at the lesson itself, remember, no beginner or static lessons. Face coverings must be worn with no exemptions. The car needs to be ventilated throughout, so make sure you bring a vehicle that can easily be ventilated. There will be a brief beginning, end of lesson discussion in car, 45 minutes for the overall assessment with 40 minutes wheels moving. What happens after the lesson? The examiner will complete the report in the office. There will be feedback to the instructor outside of the car at the end of the assessment if practical. An audit trainer can be involved either in person or via phone after the session. Strengths or weaknesses of the candidate will be highlighted in the test report and will help you develop your personal performance. If you feel you do need extra development, you can seek the services of an audit trainer. Continued professional development is really important in helping you develop your performance overall as a trainer and helping your pupils succeed as well. Let's have a look quickly at the value of training and development. Regardless of how long you have been training, CPD is still important. Trainers who regularly refresh and develop their skills and knowledge are able to pass up-to-date knowledge and skill onto their pupils and in turn improve their safety and competency. We spoke before about requesting your fault analysis. This report charts a pattern of faults against your personal reference number and is useful in highlighting where developments may be needed in your training approach. You can request your fault analysis free of charge via OMI or OMI at dvsa.gov.uk. DVSA and NASP strongly recommend you seek support and guidance from an audit trainer to help you develop your training overall, and particularly in advance of your next assessment. You can benefit from an audit trainer's knowledge and experience, gain objective feedback, pinpoint strengths and weaknesses, and learn how to develop your training overall for the benefit of you, the trainer, and your pupils. NASP associations, including NJC, DIA and MSA, also offer training guidance in the areas of Part 3s, Part 2s and standards checks. Some sources of useful information to help you prepare for your next assessment. You can visit the NSP website for more coronavirus advice in general and in preparation for these assessments. There you will find changes to Parts 2, 3 and standards check assessments, the standard operating procedures for both of those tests, and lots of other advice as well. Thank you for listening to this presentation and good luck in your next assessment.